Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The United States has distanced itself from an incursion into Russia, which Moscow says ended in the defeat of armed insurgents who entered from Ukraine. A video released by the Russian Defense Ministry at the Graveron border crossing station showed 2 damaged US-made Humvees. Parts of the border region of Belgorod came under attack on Monday in one of the largest cross-border raids since Russia invaded its neighbour last year. The US insisted it did not encourage or enable strikes inside of Russia. A 95-year-old woman who was tasered by police at an Australian care home, sparking a public outcry, has died.
Cheers to everybody.
Claire Noland was critically injured after police responded to reports she was wandering her care home with a knife at about 4 a.m. last Wednesday. New South Wales police said she died on Wednesday evening surrounded by family and loved ones. The officer who tasered Mrs. Noland has been charged with assault. The United Nations Human Rights Chief has described the situation in Sudan as heartbreaking and made a direct call to the 2 warring generals to stop sexual violence and spare the lives of citizens. Fighting in Sudan that broke out more than a month ago has killed hundreds of civilians and forced more than 1 million people to flee the violence.
Commissioner for Human Rights,
Volker Turk, who met with both generals in Sudan in November, said his office had received reports of fighter jets and clashes in the capital Khartoum overnight, despite a ceasefire.
It's heartbreaking what is happening in Sudan. In spite of successive ceasefires, and they keep making these arrangements, we see that they get observed in their breach almost within hours after these arrangements are signed. We see how civilians continue to be exposed to serious risk of death and injury. I mean, overnight we received reports of fighter jets across Khartoum and clashes in some areas of the city, as well as gunfire heard in Khartoum North and in Durman.
Anti-racism activists have rallied outside the Spanish consulate in Sao Paulo to condemn racial slurs shouted towards Real Madrid's Brazilian striker Vinicius Jr. in Valencia. The protesters projected messages on the facade of the consulate such as "Enough of racism" and "La Liga is racist." 7 people were detained by Spanish police earlier on Tuesday, accused of different hate crimes against Vinicius Jr., including the racist slurs allegedly hurled at the Brazilian. Raging wildfires neared roads in Alberta in Canada, complicating transport lines after authorities shut down parts of the main Highway 43.
Holy fuck.
According to local officials, the highway was partially closed as a precautionary measure on Monday as wildfires neared the road.
Holy fucking shit!
So far this year, Alberta Wildfire has responded to 496 wildfires burning through more than 842,000 hectares, compared with just 459 hectares last year. Over 2,800 firefighters from Canada and the US were battling around 91 active wildfires over the weekend. Residents of Guam have been bracing themselves for Typhoon Mawar, a massive storm that meteorologists predict will be one of the most brutal to hit the region in decades. Video on social media shows palm trees being torn into by huge winds as Typhoon Mawar approached the island of Guam. US forces based on the island have sent away ships and other major apparatus that could be damaged by the Category 4 hurricane. Mawar is expected to bring 240 km/h winds and could cause extensive damage. A storm surge of 6 to 10 feet above the normal high tide was expected, which could reach up to 15 feet. Officials warned residents who are not in fully concrete structures to consider moving for safety. And finally, dashcam video has showed the moment a cow was lassoed by a cowboy after a dramatic chase on a highway in Michigan. The footage posted by Michigan State Police 2nd District showed a wrangler on a horse emerge from the bushes, chasing the runaway cow across the highway. According to authorities, the north and southbound lanes of the highway were closed for safety reasons. The animal was eventually recaptured and is now safely back in pasture. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.